Chinese students studying abroad are facing unprecedented challenges.
抱歉，我们不录取中国学生。
Sorry, we don't accept Chinese students. So much for the idea that science has no borders. Who would have thought that ETH Zurich, Einstein alma mater, would blacklist Chinese students? Right now, the world's top 4 engineering schools, Caltech, Imperial College London, MIT, and ETH Zurich, are all shutting out Chinese students. If you're Chinese and studying science or engineering, you're blocked. The US crackdown on China's technological development has now extended all the way to universities. This Chinese TikToker is criticizing ETH Zurich for rejecting Chinese students. Is what she is saying true? The situation is more complicated than it seems. ETH Zurich, one of the world's most prestigious universities, is dedicated to training top engineers and scientists. Recently, the university imposed an unprecedented restriction on admitting students from China and other countries. The reason? To minimize the risk of technology and knowledge being used for the Chinese Communist Party's military purposes. On October 31st last year, ETH Zurich officially announced its latest security screening policy. The new rules affect applications for PhD and master's programs, visiting scholars, and new employees. The review process considers applicants' country of origin, prior education at institutions deemed security risk, and any scholarships received from sanctioned countries. This change will impact applicants from countries under international sanctions, such as Iran, Afghanistan, and Russia. However, Chinese citizens will be the most affected. In recent years, a surge in Chinese students may have raised concerns at ETH Zurich. The university reported that since 2023, it has admitted over 1,300 Chinese students, twice as many as in 2018. This is the first time a Swiss university has publicly announced such a broad screening process for Chinese students. Other universities may follow suit. According to Swiss-German broadcaster SRF, Zurich University of the Arts (ZHDK) announced on October 28 last year that it had officially ended its joint program with Harbin Institute of Technology in China. Harbin Institute of Technology is one of China's 7 Sons of National Defense, a group of Chinese universities linked to the country's military research. The group includes Harbin Institute of Technology, Beihang University, Northwestern Polytechnical University, Beijing Institute of Technology, Harbin Engineering University, Nanjing University of Aeronautics and Astronautics, and Nanjing University of Science and Technology. In 2020, the US government, citing national security concerns, placed these universities and several others on the Commerce Department's sanctions list. Restrictions on Chinese students have now expanded to more European universities. In July last year, the Eindhoven University of Technology in the Netherlands announced that it would no longer admit candidates who receive scholarships from the China Scholarship Council. The Netherlands play a key role in the global semiconductor supply chain. In 2023, the Biden administration pressured the Dutch government to reduce the number of Chinese students. Eindhoven University of Technology is located just 8 kilometers from the headquarters of ASML, the world's leading supplier of advanced semiconductor manufacturing equipment. The university has close research ties with the company. Germany is also stepping up precautions against Chinese espionage. According to the German Federal Ministry of Education and Research, more academic institutions are establishing ethics committees and export control office to monitor research flows and address national security risk linked to foreign students. Data from the German Academic Exchange Service, DAAD, shows that in 2023, out of 220 Chinese students, PhD candidates, and researchers who received DAAD scholarships, 4 had their visa applications rejected. Chinese students, once welcomed and admired in the West, are now facing growing restrictions. But before blaming others, China must first reflect on its own actions. The Chinese Communist Party, CCP's ambition is to dominate global technology. It has launched a military-civil fusion strategy and various talent programs to acquire advanced Western technology. One tactic that has raised concerns in the West is using different methods and personnel to steal technology. International students have become a key tool in this effort. One well-known case of a Chinese student acting as a spy is Ji Chaoqun. He entered the US on a student visa to study electrical engineering. The US Department of Justice stated that G was an agent for China's Ministry of State Security. His mission was to obtain advanced US aerospace and satellite technology. In January 2023, G was sentenced to 8 years in prison. He was later sent back to China in a US-China prison exchange in 2024. Another case involves Yang Qingye, a lieutenant in the Chinese military. She obtained a J-1 exchange visitor visa from the US State Department to study at Boston University's Department of Physics, Chemistry, and Biomedical Engineering. In January 2020, she was charged with visa fraud, making false statements, acting as a foreign government agent, and conspiracy. She is currently living in China. In January 2020, Chinese cancer researcher Zhao Shongzhen, who had also held a J-1 visa, was arrested while trying to board a flight to China. He was caught smuggling 21 vials of biological research samples from the US. In January 2021, he was sentenced to approximately 87 days in prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. He was then deported from the US. In October 2024, a Chinese graduate student at the University of Minnesota was sentenced to 6 months in prison. He was caught flying a drone near Newport News shipyard in Virginia, capturing images of US Navy vessels that were still in the design phase and contained classified systems. Students from authoritarian China are more likely to become spies for the CCP. One main reason is that they have been subjected to years of government indoctrination. Even after going abroad, many remain loyal to the regime. They are often referred to as little pinks. When Chinese leaders visit foreign countries, Chinese students are frequently mobilized to welcome them. Their everyday behavior can also be puzzling. On December 31st, 2024, a Chinese student complained that the University of Birmingham's Sports Center was displaying both the Chinese flag and the Taiwan flag at the same time. He wrote to the Chinese embassy and the university to report the issue. Many people online criticized him for being overly sensitive. One commenter responded, "This kind of outrage is outdated." On February 25th, 2025, a Chinese user on X posted a video showing that patriotic spirit is everywhere. The video showed Chinese students abroad writing messages on public bulletin boards. In one instance, a male student lifted his classmate to write "China" at the highest point. This kind of behavior is hard to understand for people in other countries. As the US-China tech war intensifies, Washington is not only restricting exports of high-tech products like semiconductors, but also tightening national security screening for Chinese students and scholars. In recent years, more Chinese students in STEM fields have faced interrogations and deportations when entering the US. In June 2024, the CCP's state-run newspaper China Daily criticized the US for what it called the unjustified harassment, interrogation, and deportation of Chinese students traveling to the US for study and academic conferences. At the time, US Ambassador to China Nicholas Burns responded by saying that more than 99% of student visa holders successfully passed immigration screenings. However, he emphasized you must be honest when filling out your visa application. If not, you will get caught. In February this year, Republican Congressman Riley Moore warned that a significant number of Chinese students in the US could be spies. He urged Congress to pass legislation banning student visas for Chinese nationals to prevent espionage activities. In October last year, the US federal government charged 5 Chinese nationals with trespassing at a military base in Michigan. They were accused of filming a live fire exercise involving US and Taiwanese troops. All 5 were students at the University of Michigan on student visas. Moore cited this case as just the tip of the iceberg, saying the CCP is increasingly using American academic institutions as platforms for espionage. During the 2023-2024 academic year, nearly 280,000 Chinese students held US student visas. Moore argued that even with increased time and resources spent on visa screening, it is impossible to eliminate the threat of Chinese espionage. He believes the only solution is to remove all opportunities for Chinese spies to collect sensitive information in the US. He said it's time to turn off the tap. However, Lu Shi, a Chinese graduate student at a university in Washington, was shocked by the proposal. She felt it was excessive to treat all Chinese students this way, as most of them were just ordinary students. Bill Drexel, a research fellow at the Center of a New American Securities Technology and National Security Program, acknowledged that the CCP is highly skilled at espionage and coercing its citizens into spying. However, he questioned whether blocking Chinese students from US education was the best solution. Drexel pointed out that during the Cold War, the Soviet Union was hesitant to send students to the US because it feared they would be influenced by American values, which could threaten Soviet control. At the time, US leaders encouraged as many Soviet students as possible to study in America. Michael Cunningham also said that nothing scares the CCP more than Chinese students studying abroad. Looking at modern Chinese history, every major revolution either started overseas or was led by individuals who had lived and studied abroad. The CCP understands the power and risk of its students being exposed to Western ideas and values. That is why it spares no effort in ensuring students monitor each other. He believes that the best way to push the CCP out of American university is to dismantle the Chinese Students and Scholar Association, which is overseen and funded by the Chinese embassy. Some Chinese students who participate in American civic activities have faced harassment and suppression from individuals acting on behalf of the CCP. The US, he said, should prosecute these individuals and ensure that Chinese students are aware of the rights granted to everyone living in the country under the US Constitution. Bill Drexel from the Center for a New American Security stated that the best defense is a strong offense. He argued that the US should actively encourage more Chinese students to study in the country so they would witness firsthand the brutality and authoritarian nature of their government. He also believed this could help them gain a clearer understanding of their own country. While democracy might appear chaotic, he said, it was actually a key factor in the prosperity of the American people. Previously, some US officials had considered another approach. On June 24th last year, then US Deputy Secretary of State Kurt Campbell said that, for security reasons, American universities were restricting Chinese students from accessing sensitive technology-related fields. He stated, I would like to see more Chinese students come into the United States to study humanities and social sciences, not particle physics. June Tufel-Dreyer, a political science professor at the University of Miami, stated that such a policy not only protects US technological assets but also helps counter the Chinese Communist Party's efforts to portray the US in a negative light. She argued that if Chinese students focused on humanities rather than science, the risk of scientific data and technology being stolen and transferred to China would be significantly reduced. Dr. Wang Zhishen from the Asia-Pacific Elite Interchange Association in Taiwan noted that due to US restrictions, the CCP has redirected its students and scholars in key technology fields to Europe. He pointed out that the Netherlands, which has advanced lithography technology, has become a key destination. However, this shift has led European countries to tighten their own policies. Cases of Chinese students involved in espionage have also emerged in Europe, although authorities have handled them quietly. According to a report by Swiss public broadcaster RTS in April 2024, Swiss police launched an investigation in July 2023 into a Chinese student who has purchased an old hotel next to a Swiss military airfield. The airfield was set to receive US-made F-35 fighter jets, raising suspicions of espionage. However, Swiss authorities kept the case low profile. The investigations reportedly found no definitive evidence of espionage, and the student and his family had already left Switzerland by the end of 2023. Their whereabouts remain unknown. A striking trend is that Chinese students and scholars now find themselves caught between two sides. On one hand, Western countries are increasingly distrustful of them. On the other hand, the CCP, despite wanting them to spy and steal technology, does not fully trust them either. In recent years, China's Ministry of State Security has become more vocal. It frequently publishes warnings to young Chinese studying abroad, reminding them to safeguard state secrets. Last year, the ministry claimed that some Chinese university students had been recruited by foreign spies. A unique trend has emerged. Unlike Chinese students who study science and engineering in the West, those pursuing humanities and social sciences have found that the Chinese government is increasingly cautious or even hostile towards their fields of study. A professor at the University of Cologne who specializes in Mao-era research told Voice of America, "Many of my Chinese PhD students are worried about the political climate in China. Because of this, many of them hope to delay their graduation and postpone their return home." A Chinese PhD student studying social sciences at a German-speaking university noted that China was moving towards a more isolated and rigid academic environment. He described the trend as academic subjectification and North Koreanization, as China continues to distance itself from Western humanities and social sciences. On the eve of China's Youth Day in 2022, Chinese leader Xi Jinping visited Renmin University of China and emphasized the need to build what he called an independent knowledge system. Just days later, Renmin University announced its withdrawal from international university rankings. Nanjing University and Lanzhou University also pulled out. As US restrictions on Chinese students and scholars accessing advanced technology continues to increase, Beijing is looking to European countries to acquire high-tech expertise. At the CCP's third plenum in July 2024, the party proposed encouraging top foreign universities in science and engineering to establish cooperative programs in China. On December 15, 2022, Hainan Province signed an agreement with Germany's Bielefeld University of Applied Sciences to establish an independent institution in China. Hainan Bielefeld University of Applied Sciences became the first officially launched independent foreign university project in China. However, these institutions are not truly independent. The CCP requires party officials to be included in decision-making bodies, prohibits the use of foreign textbooks without prior review, and strictly bans training institutions from offering foreign education programs. Taiwanese scholar Wang Zhishen noted that while the CCP sees Western technology as essential to its goal of surpassing the US and other advanced nations, it fears humanities and social sciences. He stated that these fields inevitably exposes students to universal values such as democracy, freedom, and human rights. Wang Zhishen believes learning about these concepts strengthens anti-CCP sentiments and encourages independent thinking. This is the CCP's dilemma. These are the two extremes. Wang argued that China's rejection of Western humanities is an attempt to construct a closed ideological system that serves the Chinese Communist Party's political needs and external conflicts. He noted that it remains unclear whether this strategy will be effective. However, he pointed out that when it comes to technology, China is being forced to decouple from the West, which will ultimately slow the country's overall scientific and research development. Meanwhile, Chinese students returning home are facing growing challenges in the job market. This came out of nowhere. The system is starting to shut out international students. 2025 has just begun and Chinese students are already facing a major setback. Those who plan to return home and apply for government jobs can't even fill out the application form. Graduates from prestigious foreign universities were once top candidates for China's government recruitment programs. However, this year, returning students are increasingly being excluded. In cities like Beijing and provinces like Guangdong, government hiring programs have completely shut out overseas graduates. For example, Guangdong's 2025 recruitment notice removed nearly 60 foreign universities from its selection list. The excluded institutions include Harvard University, Stanford University, the University of Chicago, the University of Cambridge, and the University of Oxford. Only graduates from select domestic universities are now eligible to apply. These recruitment programs, known as selected civil servants, involve provincial party organizations selecting outstanding graduates to work at the grassroots level as future political leaders. Compared to the regular civil service programs or exams, this selection process has stricter political requirements. Candidates must be CCP members and may need to have military service experience during their university years. Associate Professor Feng Chong-yi at the University of Technology, Sydney, pointed out that studying abroad was once seen as a symbol of China's reform and opening up. He noted that in the past, returning students were prioritized for government jobs. However, since Xi Jinping took office, overseas graduates have faced increasing discrimination. Over the past decade, this trend has reflected the Chinese Communist Party's growing suspicion of the outside world. Fern believes that more Chinese students now prefer to stay abroad, and many only return if they have no other choice. Once back in China, they often struggle to find jobs. Many overseas students are aware of how the CCP covered up the COVID-19 outbreak and allowed the virus to spread. During the white paper movement, students in China even called on overseas Chinese students to support their protests. This has made the CCP even more wary of the student community.